This is House Education Committee, and we greet our internet listeners if they are on, and we just ask that everyone in the room shut off your cell phones, and if you have to use them, just step outside of the room. The Secretary will call the roll. It seems really quiet. It doesn't seem loud at all.
Representative
Here.
Campbell. Deutsch.
Here.
Gibson.
Here.
Hawks.
Here.
Holmes.
Here.
Hunt.
Here.
Kaiser excused. Klum.
Here.
May. McCleary.
Here.
Tulson.
Here.
Woolman.
Here.
Zickmund.
Here.
John's excused. Sly.
Here.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum, so we will move forward with approval of the minutes. The chair is asking for approval of the February 17th minutes. It's been moved by Representative Zickman, seconded by Representative Holmes. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same sign. The minutes are approved. I'm going to ask you, does it sound like my mic is on? It doesn't, no. Does it? Yeah. Okay, it doesn't feel like it up here, so that's why I'm just wondering if something got changed.
Pushing that for myself.
Okay.
They were in and checked them, so.
Okay, thanks. And I'll try to use my teacher voice as we go forward. So, pages, we have some pages in the room. Please come forward and identify yourself and share a little bit about you. And if you don't want to tell us what you're going to be doing, you can tell us an interest that you have too, or both.
Good morning. My name is Julia Loudenberg. I hail from Salem, South Dakota. I am a senior, and next year I will be pursuing a degree in global studies somewhere.
Welcome.
My name is Hannah Carlson. I'm a senior at Parker High School. Next year, hopefully, I'll be attending University of Iowa, looking into dentistry.
Okay, we're glad you're here. And just for the people in the audience, too, that we use our pages for handing out any handouts that you have. If you plan to testify, be sure that you print your name at the podium in the back. And we have Senator Bradford back there getting his name printed very clearly so our secretary can read it when she gets to the minutes. Okay, if you're a lobbyist, be sure that you're wearing your badge of the group that you are representing. And if you're just representing as an individual, just say that you're here for yourself. And with that, we'll have all questions will be addressed through the chair. We have 3 bills today. And sometimes when we get on bills, it's easy to get off on others' subjects or topics, so just ask that you keep your remarks germane to the bill that we're going to be talking about too. So with that, we are going to take them in order as they are printed on the agenda. And before we start, Secretary Schopp has an introduction that she would like to make. She just talked to me earlier and she gave me a good reminder back there.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for taking this time before. I'd like to introduce to you Mateau Standing High. He's the Director of Indian Education for the department, and he won't be able to stay for the whole committee meeting today. We have a bill up in Appropriations, Senate Bill 9, which is the funding bill that will support the work that was done over the summer. And so with that, if you can just have a minute to introduce himself and a little bit of his background. If he's done in time, he will be back in committee today, but so pleased to have him on board. He has a real passion for the students, has been a great addition to the Department of Ed. So Mateau, if you could just tell a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Melody. Esteemed representatives, good morning. Thank you for your time. I'm a Rosebud Sioux tribal member. I was born in Rosebud, spent a little of my early childhood on the East Coast, and I ended up growing up in Spearfish. Been trying to find a way back ever since. What a beautiful place. But thank you for your time. I'm really excited and honored to be Director of Indian Education, and I look forward to improving the lives of all of our children for South Dakota and moving forward. So thank you for your time, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you. And good luck next door when you're over there. We will begin with House Bill 1146, an act to authorize the governor to enter agreements with Indian tribes regarding the high school equivalency tests administered on Indian reservations. Proponents, Any proponents for House Bill 1146?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Sean Bordeaux, District 26A, Mission, South Dakota. House Bill 1146 is a bill to authorize the governor to enter into agreements with Indian tribes regarding the high school equivalency tests administered on Indian reservations. I work at St. Egaleshka University in Mission, and we have GED centers in several counties, in 4 counties, and we provide services to natives and non-Native Americans alike. It serves as a good program to help students who don't finish high school to get themselves into a university or trade program. We offer many programs up to master's degree and 1 and 2 year certificates as well. So many of our students here find themselves going into whether it's welding or carpentry or nursing program, and we're happy to have those programs available to them. But we draw often from our GED students. Our high schools have dropout rates from 50 to 70% on our reservation. My nephew had 250 students in his freshman class. He graduated 2 years ago, and only 50 graduated out of that group. Now, I'm not sure what numbers are out there, but I think that's somewhere close to an 80% dropout rate. Now, about the GED program, I have a few comments here regarding the testing, and what we would really like to do is consider trying to offer not only the GED test that is currently available, but also go back to the other test that was made available in the past. And up until about 2 years ago, our students had a great, in comparison, chance of passing the test and moving on into college or trade school. 1 year after the launch of a major overhaul of the GED exam, the high school equivalency program has seen a sharp drop in the number of people who took and passed the test, according to local and state educators and the organization that runs it. In addition, at least 16 states have begun offering or plan to offer new alternative tests. Our number of graduates for this calendar year has dropped about 85%, says one coordinator from Lexington, South Carolina. States including Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Colorado are reporting large drops as well. Nationally, the GED testing service says while it has seen a sizable decrease, the numbers in 2012, there was a total of 401,388 people who passed the GED test. In 2013, the final year of the old test, there was a rush to have people go in there and try to get their test done before the change to the new one, and a total of 540,000 people, 535, had passed the test. So in 2014, when this new test came into being, they tried to ramp it up for the STEM programs. They want to see more science and math come out of these folks, but unfortunately, the folks who end up dropping out of school aren't usually the folks that go to the School of Mines. They don't go to MIT. These are the folks that often become the welders and Marines, and the folks who are many of the blue-collar workers, and many of the people from my community fit into this category. So in the program in 2014, the general population only 58,000, a tenth of the people who had taken in 2013. And that isn't to count the people who are in penitentiaries, and so the number is a little larger of those who had taken the test. But the point is there's a substantial drop in the number of people who are passing the test. Now, over the years, the test has been updated 5 times, and those upgrades commonly resulted in drops in participation the following year. The last update in 2002 resulted in a 1-year drop of 53% of test takers. But this time around, some adult educators are reacting strongly to changes that they say create unnecessary barriers for people who are already struggling. The tests increase difficulty, the higher cost, and the computer requirement are all things that people are complaining about with the new test. Now, what we're trying to do is to open the door to create another opportunity to bring in another test. And this other test is a high school equivalency test, or the HiSET. And it's produced by a nonprofit and called ETS and the University of Iowa. Now, the HiSET is now coming into use in 12 states. There's another test that some of the other states have used called the TASC, and it's approved in 9 states. But the way they're designed, plus the lower cost and paper and pencil delivery options, the HiSET and TASC are much more fair to students. Now, Nevada offers the 3 tests, and GED is $95. The TASC and HiSET are only $65, so that too helps, especially when we're dealing with some of the poor people who can't afford the extra $30 it costs for the GED test. So states are offering other choices for people. For 72 years, the GED was the only game in town, no matter which town you lived in. Then in a matter of 1 year, 10 states dropped it. 21 states so far have now adopted the cheaper alternative tests, the TASC and the HiSET. Today, more than ever, a high school diploma is widely viewed as an economic necessity. Now, I believe this bill will help to open the door to provide other testing services, which are better suited to the needs of people today. I thank you for your time, committee. I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you. Other proponents? Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. I'm Jim Bradford.
Turn your mic on, please.
For a familiar face. No mic?
There we go.
I'm Senator Bradford from District 27. Wow. This is a tremendous committee. I didn't realize it was. Anyway, thank you very much. And I'm here to tell you I have a positive thing to talk about, and that's our people who are incarcerated. I happen to be on the Department of Corrections. I'm here to tell you that when I go to the corrections, the majority share of those there are our people. And they do not have a high school degree over 80%. And then I'm going to testify to the fact that of my own son, which is he dropped out of high school at Red Cloud as a sophomore. Thought there was no need. He had no problem. He wasn't flunking, but he thought there was no need for education. Then all of a sudden, of course, we all know that Pine Ridge has about 75–80% unemployment. So off to Rapid City, and guess what? Even in the commonest job, they wanted a high school diploma. They really, when he would apply, it would be no chance. So he got into some problems. And my son ended up in prison too. But he come home, said, "What do I want to do, Dad?" I said, "Well, you better go get your high school degree, and even if you can, go on to college or whatever." So he did that. He went and took his, thanks to OLC and President Shortbull, he got his And right now, he's working at the diesel truck stop in Rapid City, and they can't commend him enough, and that GED made the difference in his life. And that's what we're here about, is making a difference in our people's lives, making a future. And the opportunity is here for you to make that and not hurt any part of what is going on with the regular GED. This will simply be an extra test that will accomplish what we want to do so these people can get those kinds of jobs. And I want to thank you for your time, and stand by.
Thank you. As we've gotten a good foundation, and make sure your testimony now will build on what we know rather than, and I know you will. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Kevin Killer, State Representative from Pine Ridge, South Dakota. And I'm just going to be really quick because I would like to save some of the time to have other members testify, but just coming up here to say that, I really support this as well. And just because simply, I think one of the things that I do for a living is work with Native youth and at a college age. And one of the things that, we really look at is making sure that we set them up for success. And I think this test is really going to help them, set up younger generations for success. And I think one of the larger philosophical arguments about this whole, this bill itself is that, the standards were put on our kids rather than our kids weren't prepared for these standards. And, all of you being in education, I think one of the things that you really realize is that, we need to make sure we have items for our kids to really set them up for success. So I think that's you'll listen to the testimony and hear that negotiation. But I want to save my time for our esteemed tribal chairman, who's actually came into town to testify on that, because that's how important it is. And he could have been anywhere in the United States. He could have literally been in San Diego. He could have been in Washington, D.C. He could have been anywhere, because his time is extraordinarily valuable. So and I think this might be his first time ever coming to our capital. This is how important it is for our community and our members. And, I just really want to ask the committee to give him that time and that urgency to hear his testimonies. Thank you, Madam Chair. I do support this bill, and I really encourage you to all listen. Thank you, members of the committee.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning, Madam Chair and members of the Education Committee. My name is Tom Shortbow. I'm president of Oglala Dakota College.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yep. We always look for the green light right around here as a reminder.
When I tell you the situation with GD can be traced back to President Obama, you will immediately think, how in the heck could President Obama have anything to do with GD? 5 years ago, I was attending the American Council on Education, and I heard Nicole Chastain with ACE say that they were going to make a major change in the GED test. I believe that Nicole Chastain wanted to impress President Obama with a move that would make the math and science sections of the GED harder so that it would produce more mathematicians and scientists to coincide with President Obama's initiative of increasing the number of mathematicians and scientists in this nation from the then ranking of the United States being somewhere between 12th and 18th worldwide compared to other nations. Once she was through with her presentation, I strenuously objected to what she was proposing. The basis of my objection was that the GED had always been a second chance for people to improve their lot in life, and to make the test harder just to please President Obama would result in a decrease in the number of people who would be able to get a GED, and that is exactly what has happened. And it will continue to happen with the GED Pearson. I also told her that the current GED test, now the old test, had tougher requirements to a significant number of graduating seniors. The reason that the old test had tougher requirements is that in order to get a GED under the old test, you must be able to show that you have a 12th grade reading level. Now I would like to present what is the reading levels of graduating seniors, and if you have my packet, it's attachment C. And you'll see that at the 11th grade, 59.71 of the 11th graders had a 11th grade reading level. So a year later, it would basically be the same thing, that our graduating seniors would have, there would only be 59.71 of them that would have a 12th grade reading level. Remember, the general equivalency diploma should reflect what almost all graduating seniors should have as skills levels. There should be somewhere between 90 and 95% of graduating seniors who should have a 12th grade reading level. In reality, the general equivalency, I believe, would be somewhere, the graduating seniors that we have in South Dakota, somewhere between 10th and 11th grade. And if you did an average of the reading scores for all graduating seniors, clearly those with GEDs would have greater skills than 40% of our graduating seniors in this state. The position that the GED students have strong skills is validated at our college, with our best students being our GED students, because they're coming in with 12th grade reading levels. Now, what has been the impact at our college with the new GED Pearson test? First, OLC has been in the business of preparing students for GED's exams since 1974, and our college has been very effective in annually helping our people obtain a GED. Over the last 11 years, we have a chart that shows the number of GEDs, and that's attachment D, and you'll see that we average somewhere around 29. And everything changed in 2013. Across the state, people became aware that a tougher test was going to go into effect. Look at 2013. 54 students took the test. They basically ran to the testing site. They didn't want to take this new test. Now, look what's happened. In 2014, we're down to 8. In 2015, we're down to 5. And that is across all our reservations. We've had a major drop-off in the number of people that have gotten GEDs. Now I would like to speak to you about the good neighbor policy. First, OLC believes that it is a good neighbor to non-Indian communities that are close to our reservation. I would like to have you look at our winter 2015 OLC newsletter. It's this document right here. Our economic impact to our service delivery area is $58.8 million. And most of that $58.8 million is deposited with the city of Rapid City. Our people go to Rapid City, and if you want to go to Walmart and see your relatives or your friends, you'll see them in Walmart, because almost all of our people on reservations go to Walmart. So the economic impact to the state is substantial, and it's substantial with the other reservations that we have, with the Cheyenne River Reservation, with the Siston-Wapton Reservation in northeast South Dakota, and especially with the Sinte Gleshka College on the Rosebud Reservation, affecting Winter, Gregory, and Pierre. So what does the situation with GD have to do with the good neighbor policy? Well, if your neighbor has a problem and he comes to you asking that you help him, then under the good neighbor policy, you should help him. The situation with our Indian reservation is that we believe that the current GED Pearson exam is an unfair test. It's not a harder test, it's an unfair test. The solution is to have the state recognize that the tribes have the sovereign authority to establish their own choice as to what the GED test is for the tribal members on their reservation. We have a legal opinion on the tribe's ability to establish a GED test or test of their choice on their reservation. That's attachment E. OLC presented the legal authority for tribes to establish the GED of their choice with the Educational Testing Service, and that's the test that we want to have a second choice for our students, who administers the HISEP exam. And they responded that they did not want to bring the test to the Indian reservations unless they had the blessing of the states in which they operate. So in other words, they don't want to come to South Dakota unless they have the blessing of this legislature. Now let's get to the heart of the matter and tell you what we need and how it would be implemented. House Bill 1146, what it does, it allows the governor to enter into agreements with South Dakota Indian tribes to allow them to have their choice of which tests that they would want on their reservations. So what would be available to the tribes, some tribes may stick with GED Pearson. Some tribes may want to have just the HISEP exam as their sole test, or they would take the option that we want on our reservation, is that we want to stick with the GED test, but we want a second option. And the second option is the HISEP exam. In one of the 12 states that have chosen to utilize the HISEP exam, Wyoming does allow the GED takers to choose to take either the GED Pearson test or the HISEP test. The great irony is that some of the students who are prepared for GED exams in Rapid City are choosing to go to Wyoming to take the HISEP exam. And they're doing it because it's much cheaper. It's much cheaper. Let's go over the benefits of the HISEP exam. If you look at the last attachment, and it looks like I misplaced that, but anyway, the test for GED Pearson is $130. I got it, I can remember it. But anyway, the test with HISEP is $50. And with the GED Pearson, to take a retake, it's $10. And there's no cost for the student if they have to do a retake with HISEP. Clearly, it's a better test for our students. What we have here with the GED is that it's all about business. The American Council on Education, I believe, in a sinister way, sold the rights to the GED trademark and the ability to provide the test to Pearson, which is one of a major testing services in this country. Pearson thought they had a monopoly. Pearson thought they had a monopoly because before this, there weren't alternative tests. And the reason that they went to alternative tests because people said they were too tough. The reason that I say a senator is ACE is a nonprofit organization. In fact, it's a lobbying or it's an advocacy group for the major colleges in this country. And they should not be selling the GED trademark to make a profit. The problem faced by this situation is that ACE will do whatever it can to prevent other states from going to alternative states. You will probably hear from state officials saying, we need to stay with the GED exam and no other. Well, that's not the case. We don't need that. Here's what I believe is a half-truth. In attachment A on the second page, there is a statement from Nicole Chastain. She says, the thing that concerns me about having lots of tests out in the marketplace is that it creates a confusion for test takers. I also want to make sure that we are setting the same standard for people. Now, how condescending is that statement? Basically, they're saying to us in South Dakota, you are so stupid that you can't differentiate between the two tests. This is an easy situation to understand. One test is basically geared to the major colleges in this country. HISEP is a test that can be used at multiple levels. One to go to college, one to go to our vocational schools, and one to get a job in which you need a GED. The GED Pearson test is gearing to go to the preeminent or the elite colleges in this country, to go to the MITs, to go to Stanford, to go to Harvard. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I suspect that many of you were unaware of the GED problems in our state. The reason that you're not aware of the problem is because of the situation with those who are taking the GED exam. To not graduate with your classmate is a deflating situation for these students. And it used to be that many who would take the GED exam were young women who were pregnant. Now we see a lot of students who have left high school due to bullying. I believe that there is a loss of confidence in these students. So when they fail the GED exam, these students believe that it's their fault and that they failed the test. It's not their fault. The fault is in the test. The test is too hard for what we need to have as a test for them. I would like you to be aware of the conversation with the president of the Salish Kootenai Tribal College in Montana. She said that after Montana converted to the HISEP exam, her college went from low numbers in producing GEDs to 80 to 90% success rate for students that they prepared for the GED exam. It's likely that OLC would achieve the same result, and of the 34 and 31 test takers at our college over the last 2 years, OLC could have produced, on average, 25 students per year rather than the 8 and 5 that we produced this last year. After your favorable consideration of House Bill 1146, I hope, and its passage by the legislature, the individual Indian tribes in South Dakota would pass legislative actions that would authorize the GED test, or test of their choice, on their Indian reservation. Next, each individual tribe would ask Governor Dugard to enter into an agreement as authorized by 1146 for having the GED exam of their choice. Over the years, the state of South Dakota has talked about improving the working relationship between Indian tribes and state government. Here is an opportunity to improve the working relationship between the state of South Dakota and Indian tribes. The committee should not only pass this bill because it improves tribal-state relations, but also because Indian people are citizens of this state. Indian people became citizens in 1924, and the reason they became citizens is that our nation appreciated that Indian people, even though they were not U.S. citizens, did volunteer to fight in World War I. My wife's grandfather, Francis Janice, did volunteer for World War I along with 20 other men from South Dakota. When Francis told his story to me, he said he and other young Indian men at Flandre Indian School and a flatbed truck came onto the Flandre Indian School campus, and the man yelled out, "Do you want to fight the Kaiser?" He said yes, and his military engagement was not first in Europe, but Mexico, when General Pershing chased Pancho Villa into Mexico after Villa made a raid into Texas. He then served honorably in World War I. In my family, my father, Norman Shortwell, served in the Pacific Theater in World War II. His brother, Abraham, served in Europe during World War II. My mother, who is 92 years old, served in the Navy during World War II. My wife's father, Clarence Janice, fought in World War II, and his 82nd Airborne Unit was at the Battle of the Bulge. Also, my son, Paul, is a South Dakota National Guardsman and has served one tour of duty in Iraq. I believe that almost every family on our reservations have had a family member who served in at least one of the military engagements from World War I through today's military engagements in Afghanistan and Iraq. The president of the Oglala Sioux tribe, John Steele, who will testify here today for House Bill 1146, was served in Vietnam. Many of you might not know, I was a South Dakota State Senator some 30 years ago. And I know that legislators find a reason to vote for a bill and to not vote for a bill. The only way that you could not vote for this bill is that if you could substantiate that the HISEP exam is a watered-down bill that does not reflect the general competencies of a high school senior. Well, that's not the case. First, the entity that establishes the HISEP exam is one of the most respected educational testing services in this country. ETS does the GER. If some of you have gone to get a master's degree, you take the GER, and they provide that test. ETS would never jeopardize their reputation by developing a test that is not needed. So this is the situation that we have here, is that we need a test that's fair to our students on our reservations. Although we would be most appreciative if you passed House Bill 1146, I would like you to consider whether you should make the same benefits of this bill to all people in South Dakota. And that is that you should have, and that is that they should have the option of the GED Pearson test or the HISET test. You could do this. You could take another bill and hoghouse it and say in South Dakota, if you want to get a GED, you can have both the option of GED Pearson or the HISET. Now, if you cannot make this happen in this legislation, in this legislative session, you could at the very least have the GED issues be a summer legislative study topic. But the bottom line is We want you to give the tribes the opportunity to establish the GD test of their choice on their reservations. We have a critical need in this state. As you heard, the dropouts rates that occur at schools, a GD is a second chance in life. And what this country is famous for is that we give everybody an opportunity to succeed. We should never be in the business of denying people opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a reminder, we have a lot of people that have signed up to testify in favor, and we have 3 bills here today. So we have, in order to get through them, we want to be fair because I know you've all traveled from a long distance, and we have 3 different topics, and so we need to want to give, so be sure your information is new and builds on, how many do we have?
6.
We have 6 more for of this bill. And then we have 2 more bills after this, so, okay.
I'll make this brief. I should be under 2 minutes. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the House Committee. I am Kateri Montello, Community Continuing Education Department Director at Oglala Lakota College. I want to give you the number of our students who took the new GED test in 2014 and 2015. Those are the years that the new test started. In 2014, we had 34 people take the test with 7 passing and 27 not passing. In 2015, we had 24 people take the test with only 3 passing and 21 not passing. With the new test scores being dropped from 150 passing to 145, this happened just in January 2016. That added 1 more passing person in 2015, 14, and 2 more in 2015. It sounds confusing, but it's the numbers are really low. That's the point I want to make. After speaking with our college president, Thomas Shortbull, in 2014, I contacted the Department of Labor and Regulation Director Barb Unruh in Pierre, South Dakota. I was very surprised to hear that we were actually doing okay compared to most testing sites in the state, as well as nationwide. This is not good overall, but I did feel relieved to know that it wasn't just us with the decrease in completions. In an article I read, Matt Collette, an education reporter and radio producer from New York with a master's degree from Columbia University, said he felt exhausted and dumb after taking just the practice test, and he didn't do well in all 4 subjects. Strauss, 2015. What the GED tutors at Oglala Lakota College and I have found is that math is the subject, it's the major, if not the major hurdle for test takers to pass the GED. If you look at the numbers of test takers from 2012 to 2015, in the last 2 years, most of the ones who did not complete the test was due to the math. On Wednesday, October 28, 2015, I had 2 visitors from the employment training program from the Sistine Wapton Oyate. Denise Cranhold, the adult education career coordinator, and Beverly Rosso, the GED instructor. They're having similar problems on their reservation with only 3 GED graduates since the new GED became available in 2014. On their way to Oglala Lakota College, they stopped in to visit the Sente Gleshka University, and they found out they too were having a major decrease in GED graduates. What we all have in common is the difficulty with students passing the new test, particularly the math. These ladies were invited to meet with President Shortbull, Dr. Don Frank, and Mrs. Tina Merdanian, and myself. At the conclusion of this meeting, it was decided we would look at an alternate test called the HiSET, which 12 states already use in place of the GED. I feel our GED program and Oglala Lakota College have done all we can do to assist Pearson VUE to be able to test our GED students. We have gone out of our way to get a classroom up to par, moved to a new building, transitioned from a paper pencil test to computer testing. And we have done all that was asked of us, and we gave it our best try. But numbers don't lie. It is not where we give the test, how it's given, how it's being studied for. It's the test itself, the new GED test itself. After the meeting with our President Shortbull, Dr. Frank, and the ladies from Siston Wapton in October, I feel that confident we're on a road to a solution by offering a choice, if that was to happen with either the new Pearson VUE or HiSET. I think that would be in the best interest of our students at Oglala Lakota College. Thank you.
Thank you. Other proponents?
Good morning, Madam Chair and the members of the Education Committee. My name is Dave West. I'm the Cheyenne River College Center Director. We are a branch campus located in Eagle Butte, South Dakota, in our Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to voice great support for the House Bill 1146. I've been in contact with Mr. President Shortbull in regards to make arrangements with the GD program that serves the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe. After making the arrangements and meeting with the program, it was very evident that the graduation rates and completion rates for the program had dramatically dropped with the implementation of the new testing in 2014. The reason why Cheyenne River College Center is taking great interest in this matter is currently the only GED program serving the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe is a grant program and will be ending in June of 2016. So Cheyenne River College Center will be picking up a GED instructor and providing an additional service on the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe for the members of the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe. So great consideration on the passing of this House Bill 1146 would be greatly appreciated on behalf of the members of the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe. And also I did meet with Chairman Harold Frazier for the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe yesterday, and he gave me a written testimony to bring down and read on behalf of himself and the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe. So it's dated for February 18, 2016, to the House Education Committee. Regretfully, I am unable to address you in person regarding this very important issue due to prior commitments. The Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe supports the passage of House Bill 1146 as it is critical to the future of our tribal members. The Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe continues to work together with the state of South Dakota regarding the right of tribal community to decide the most appropriate educational path for our members. We intend to work with education and testing professionals to determine the most culturally appropriate method of equivalency assessment. And thank you for your consideration and attention to this very important issue. Harold Frazier, Tribal Chairman of Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe. Thank you.
Thank you. Other proponents?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll try to keep my comments brief.
Okay.
My name is Sherman Marshall II. I'm the director of the Sinte-Galeska University Adult Basic Education Program. Since the university's inception over 40 years ago, the Adult Basic Education Program has helped over 2,400 individuals earn a GED high school equivalency certificate. The Adult Basic Education Program serves over 200 students annually and provides adult basic education, GED preparation, and GED testing services, all of which are available free of charge to program participants. Our program has offices in Todd, Tripp, Millette, and Gregory counties, and also operates 2 GED testing centers. Our students are primarily Native American and about 15% non-Native or white students. I address you today to explain the impact that the new GED tests have had on the students in our program. The Adult Basic Education Program has seen a significant decrease in the number of students obtaining a GED certificate, from an annual average of 50 to 60 down to just 4 in 2014 and 4 in 2015. The computer-based administration of the GED test presents the greatest challenge because it makes the GED test not just a test of knowledge, but a test of basic computer literacy. GED test takers from the rural areas of the reservation are often at a disadvantage when taking the GED test on computer because they lack regular access to computers. While the majority of adult learners between the ages of 18 and 30 have basic computer skills, many of our older students often feel intimidated by having to take the GED test on a computer. The two main alternatives to the GED test, the HiSET and the TASK, are available in both computer-based and paper-based formats. The flexibility of having a paper-based format would allow older adult learners the option of taking the test in a format that is more or less intimidating for them. Among the changes to the tests in 2014 was the increase in testing fees. Considering a GED graduate would have to take at least 4 practice tests, which also cost up to $6 a piece, and 4 official GED tests, the Adult Basic Education Program will have invested at least $154 per graduate in testing fees alone, provided there are no retests required. These lower cost alternatives, the HiSET and the TASK, would help keep testing costs lower for adult education programs and for students. Anytime there's a change to the GED tests, we know there will be a period of adjustment, which is evident by the recent action by the GED testing service in lowering the passing score to 145 from 150. An examination of our records shows that only 1 current student and 1 former student will benefit from this score change and receive passing scores on a test that they had previously not passed. We do not have sufficient data at this time to determine what long-term effect the score change will have on our program. Additionally, the score change does not address the computer-based administration and cost barriers created by the GED tests. In conclusion, an alternative to the GED test would simply give adult education programs and adult learners another option when pursuing a high school equivalency certificate. Just as we know not all students learn the same way, we know not all students test the same. Adult learners deserve an opportunity to demonstrate their skills on a test that is fair and accessible and affordable to them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We're pushing up on the hour, and I'd like to have this one so that we can have our questions in by then too. So, because we have 2 more after that. Come on up. Yep, thanks. I just want to be respectful of all of you who've traveled from out of town so that you get a chance for the other ones too.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the House Committee. I am Dr. Sherry Johnson, the Education Director, and I represent the system Waptanuyate and work with the education component of the Employment Training Demonstration Program, which administers the GED test preparation program. The System Wapton College is the official test site. Our Tribal Preparation Test Center is open to all, for non-Native and Native people equally. After many students failed to pass the GED test this past year and failed to achieve the certification, we studied the problem. We requested a meeting, and Governor Dugard pulled together a staff meeting with Miss Unruh, Dr. Shaw, Ms. Holtman, and Mr. Anderson, and all discussed the lack of GED passers and other factors. At that time, Sisseton Wapton had 0. Subsequently, our staff did visit all the other Native GED sites across the state, and they were all having the same difficulty, and that we have seen also across the nation. The data for our tribe is 2010. We had 24 with average age of 24. In 2011, we had 24 with average age of 28. In 2012, we had 11 GEDs with the average age of 24, and 2013, we had 11 GEDs with the average age of 29. At the initial change in the adoption of the new GED, 7 of our professional staff of the Employment Training Demonstration Program took the pre-tests, and only 2 of them passed. The staff was very concerned about the test. In order for the GED certification, you have to pass all of the tests. Now our data is, in 2014, we had 1 at the age of 18. This is a 90% decline for the system Wapton Oyate. 2015, we had 4, the average age of 19. The age of the passers is a very clear statement. After testing, students are now walking out frustrated. Some are extremely unhappy that there is no paper and pencil version, unable to manage the computer-only options. The math test is extremely difficult. Also note the ages of the passers, of which is 18 and 19. There is a definite age gap for all of those. The employment training program is a welfare to work program, and thus this is negatively impacting our tribe and surrounding areas economically and across the state. There is the concern, and I will cut, because many people talked about the cut scores being lowered now and nationally lowered, and the cost difference in there. But we need to have options for the high school equivalency exam. Why does Pearson VUE have a monopoly on this business? The South Dakota Department of Labor states that there are 3 nationally recognized assessments, the GED, HiSET, and a task, and we are only asking for an option to choose. Thank you.
Thank you. How many more proponents do we have in the room here? 2 more? Okay.
Good morning. My name is Crystal Owen. I'm the Tribal Secretary for the System Mopton Oyate. I was elected in our last election in 2015. I am a statistic. I am a high school dropout. I dropped out of high school when I was a senior. I'm a statistic as far as I had to drop out because I became pregnant at the age of 17. I took my GED test at the time at our tribal college. And back in 1977, my father was the late Hiram C. Owen. He was our tribal education director at that time, and he administered the GED tests. We have in our community many people who suffer from being statistics, listed as statistics. We suffer from poverty, lack of employment. And so not many of our students can graduate from high school, unfortunately. This GED is a way to help them to better themselves. When this new test came into effect, I challenged myself to take that test because I heard how hard it was. I took it and I could not pass it. Now, I've learned some things over the years. I like to think of myself as, fairly intelligent in many areas, but I could not pass that test. And my frustration with how I felt and not being able to pass, I knew we had to do something. And as elected official, I met with the Department of Labor, and we talked back in October. Why can't we have a choice? Why can't our students have an option? Why do they have to be held back? Because this GED test is the only test that they can take. We don't want a chance to go under any kind of status bar, excuse me for using the words, dummy down a test. But all we want to do is have an opportunity. And today, this choice is in your hands. I don't know how this whole legislative body works, but we would like for you to seriously consider passing this, letting it go on to the next level, so that our people throughout South Dakota, every single individual, we're all human beings, that we would have the opportunity to have a choice, to make a choice. And today that decision to give opportunity to all citizens of South Dakota is in your hands. And I ask that you would look upon that favorably. Thank you.
Thank you. Other proponents? Good morning.
Chairwoman Sly,
Yes.
honorable representatives of the state legislature, I thank you for this opportunity to testify before you on a very important bill.
Sir, could you tell us your name?
Yes.
Yes.
My name
Okay.
is John Yellowbird Steele.
Okay, thank you.
I am the elected president on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation.
Okay.
I also enjoy the title of being elected as chairman of the Great Plains Tribal Chairmen's Association.
Thank you.
And we held meetings here in Pierre yesterday.
Okay.
The tribal chairmen.
Thanks.
I'm a Vietnam veteran. 2 of my brothers are honorably discharged. Another of my brothers was in Vietnam same time I was. I joined up because President Kennedy said we should donate a few years of our lives to our country back then. And I joined the Army Security Agency for 4 years. They taught me to read, speak, and write the Vietnamese language. That was my job. And I enjoyed one of the back then, one of the highest security clearances in these United States, top secret clearance. But I'd like, just for your information, let you know that I've been invited by a federal agency, the commemoration of memorials for veterans, to commemorate in Paris, France on April 20th, the World War I veterans. And as President Shortbull told you, back then, we were not citizens of these United States. We were only citizens of the Sioux Nation. And it wasn't until 1924, after the veterans of World War I, that they did the Citizenship Act for Native Americans. But anyway, I come before you to testify for this bill because, as President Shortbull told you, this good neighbor policy, I'd never heard of the policy before, but it sounded good to me when I was sitting back there listening, to let you know that the tribes in South Dakota are enjoying a different environment with the state government at this time. And we've been good neighbors to one another. Back in 1984, I was vice president of the tribe. We went up to Dakota and met with Senator Abner then and the non-Indian population on water. Our whole southwestern part of South Dakota has unpotable water. A lot of you don't realize this from the eastern end or the northern ends.
With all due respect, we are short on time. Could we talk about the bill so that we can continue on? Thanks.
But it's good neighbor policy.
Okay. I'm sorry. That's
water. Oglala's own and operate that pipeline, and we service all the non-Indians between us and the river. And this is working with them, not with the state government. And so the Oglala's own and operate. We service Fort Pierre. This good neighbor policy goes to us working with the county surrounding us, not the state government again, but designating our Attorney General as a state's Attorney General to uniquely take care of a jurisdictional issue. We are working with Rapid City right now to get over 4,000 warrants to an office down in Pine Ridge. These warrants are mainly traffic violations with no show in court. Then a warrant is issued then. But this good neighbor policy, as we're talking about here, really affects individuals' lives in South Dakota. State of South Dakota went with Obama's initiative on the accrediting of GED testing. Now, most of this, in my personal opinion, is because it is completely computerized testing. And like myself, I'm old school, not too adept at computers. And I graduated from a very reputable high school. I probably would not be able to pass it personally because I do not know computers that well. But we ask for your consideration of this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other proponents? Proponents of House Bill 1146? Seeing none. Opponents? Opponents of House Bill 1146?
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Melody Schaaf, Department of Ed. I come here with in opposition to the bill, but with a couple asks for you as a committee as we talk about what this bill is asking us to do. I want to just give you the facts just very briefly. Yes, South Dakota does currently use GED as their high school equivalency exam, has done so for decades. And in fact, at this point, we recognize GED as an equivalent assessment where we allow that within our accountability system. It's been well known, it's been widely accepted, and what is also interesting to know is that it is administered by the Department of Labor. The Department of Education does not administer, nor do we have oversight over the test, although we work in collaboration to set the bar. It is true, GED did increase its requirements or its rigor to align with the new expectations, what we know, what we want for college and for workforce readiness. And that is the concern of labor as well. And it is a fact, fewer people did meet the passing score in the last couple of years. But what I want to talk to you about today is what we've just heard about recently, which I think is really important. It's about the good neighbor policy. Mr. Shortbowl and Chairman Steele talked about the efforts to improve relationships between tribes and the state, and I feel this is the opportunity and exactly what we've been trying to do. Secretary of Labor, Marcia Haltman, who is in the room, as well as the Secretary of Tribal Relations, Steve Emery, and I had a conference call this fall to really discuss this issue because we were also concerned about how we could address what was happening with the assessment. The very first week of session, I had a conversation with Mr. Shortbowl and Representative Bordeaux to discuss the concerns that they were expressing about the GED issues and students not passing. My discussion with them indicated that we would be more than willing at that time to begin exploring the option again this spring. 2 years ago, ETS came to the state of South Dakota, which is the vendor that provides the HiSET exam, met with us, and we determined at that time that the HiSET did not meet the demands and the expectations for what we thought was an equivalent high school expectations. It was offered, and again, the concern was, again, 2 years ago, HiSET indicated to us at that time that they were going to be making changes to their assessment as well to increase the rigor. In my conversations with Representative Bordeaux and also Mr. Shortbowl is that we would like to have that opportunity to work again, invite them back into the state to meet not only with HiSET from ETS but also with the other assessment task to again review the assessment in collaboration, sitting at the table with the tribes and seeing what is the most appropriate assessment. Is there an opportunity for us to also have another assessment in addition to the GED at that point in time? There is also some changes that would need to be made in the Department of Labor. Again, the Department of Labor offers the exam and administers this within their centers across the state. And so it would give us time to be able to meet those expectations as well. The very next day, and I'd like to be able to say I had some input in this, but of course I didn't. The very next day, GED did announce that they did lower the score. And so their score then was lowered from 150 to 145, which we do know did have somewhat of an impact across the state. Retroactively, the new performance levels applied to individuals who had taken the test over the last couple years. So students who had earned scores between 145 and 149 prior to the new passing score were actually awarded the credential. So in addition to 545 South Dakota students who earned the credential since January 1, it was estimated that additional 78 would be awarded that based on that change in the score. I did want to make sure, though, that this was positively impacting some of our tribal communities where we knew the concerns were. Of the 120 people who tested at Laura Brule, Ogallala, Sinte Gluska, or the Sisseton centers, approximately 77 now have a passing score in at least one of the subtests. And so what we would like to encourage them at this point in time is to still go back and try to at least either they met the bar on all 4 assessments or maybe might be missing it in one, that they should go finish their tests. Switching to a new test doesn't really address the real problem. When it was stated it's unfair because it's more rigorous. Our goal truly is to prepare kids to be prepared for post-secondary and for work. So what we want to make sure is we're not lowering the bar, but that we're really making sure the kids are prepared, adults are prepared to make sure that they're ready for workforce, that they're ready for post-secondary. We want to make sure that the new assessment, if we choose to have one in the state, is going to allow us to do that. We want to do our due diligence in making sure that that happens. So the question here today is not really about giving the option, but instead, are we going to set a different standard without taking the time that we're going to have for our tribal communities across the state? We want to make sure that we're giving everybody the best option going forward. So here's my ask. Please give us the opportunity to work through the process and determine statewide if the new tests are aligned, what's appropriate for the state, if we should have a second option, if we should have a third option, or if the GED continues to be the best option. If we truly want to continue to improve tribal and state relationships, let's prove our ability to work together and sit down at the table this spring and work through the issues by looking at the assessments together and determining what's best for South Dakota. Rather than to pass a bill today that's going to demand a different set of standards without this collaboration. This is what I believe truly is the good neighbor policy and demonstrates true collaboration. So with that, I would stand by for questions and ask for you to consider opposing this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. A very short rebuttal, if you have one. Yeah, very short, because I want to respect everybody's time.
This is what is so disgusting about this situation, and that is, how can the state of South Dakota dictate to us what should be the test on our reservations? If you want to keep G.D. Pearson as the test of your choice for the non-Indian citizens of this state, then go and do that. But for heaven's sakes, give us the choice on our own reservation to decide what is the high set. This has no adverse effect to any South Dakota citizen if we have the right to give that option. And this is what disgusts people in South Dakota. When we come to you in a good way and we say help you, and a South Dakota state official says no, don't do that. This is absolutely wrong. All we're asking is that for our tribal members on our reservation, give us the opportunity to have a second option. And so I'm encouraging you very much. And the other thing I'm going to encourage you, take this test. Take this test to see if you can pass it. I gave testimony in the U.S. Senate to Senator Tester, and there were 5 senators there. And I said to them, take this test. And so they kind of chuckled. But the people that chuckled the most were the staffers. We have staffers here, and we have students, interns. Have them take the test. And you will find out that this test is so tough. Even someone with a PhD or a master's degree are not going to pass this GED exam.
The chair closes testimony, and we move into just a couple of questions. Does anyone have questions? Actually, we will be deferring action and discussion on this because we need to get to the other bills, but if there's any questions, you may have them.
I just have one question.
Representative Tolson.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for the chairman, or Mr. Shortbull.
You can come up here, he'll ask it, and then we have internet listeners.
You made a statement that you're a sovereign nation and that HISET would like to have the state approval before coming into your reservation. Is that correct?
That's what the issue is.
Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions? Representative Campbell.
I'm trying to get a picture of the GED test itself, and this, whoever from the Department of Ed or anyone familiar with the GED might be able to answer. If I understood correctly the information so far, it's a multi-part test, four parts, am I correct? Thank you.
Maybe we could all take it over the weekend.
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Marsha Holtman, Department of Labor and Regulation, and we do administer the test, and you are correct, Representative, that there are 4 sections on the test.
And a person must, Madam Chair?
Yes.
And a person must pass all 4 in order to, at a certain level, to
You must have
pass.
the base level score and then the total score of 145 now to pass it.
Okay, just a
Follow-up comment?
Well, in regards to my saying no thank you to taking the test, I certainly believe in Chairman Shortbull's comments that it might take a PhD, and even then you might fail. But
okay.
Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Representative Gibson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you just briefly tell committee members who aren't familiar with both the GED and the HiSET and the Pearson, maybe how they differ? Do they all have 4 sets of equivalencies that one must take? And I know that you probably have gone over all the different sets of tests and understand how they would differ from one another, not just in cost, but content, material content.
Madam Chair, if I may. I'm not going to be as familiar with the HiSET, so I just want to make that very clear from the start that I have reviewed the information when they came and presented to us earlier when the determination was made to stick with the GED. And as Dr. Schopp mentioned, we're more than willing to look at that again and to see what changes have been made. I have to give the perspective from the Department of Labor. We really look at this a little bit differently than the Department of Education, and we are looking at workforce readiness and what the workforce is demanding today, whereas DOE is more concerned with the well-rounded student and lifetime learning and just all those many facets that go with a high school education. So we look at what employers are requesting and what their jobs are requesting, and you'll find that the majority of jobs, you have to have at least the minimum of that high school equivalency and the skills that are commensurate with that. Computer skills being one of them. You're hard-pressed to find any job opportunity today where you're not going to be required to have some level of computer skills to do that. So when we evaluate for our purposes these different assessments, and really we're talking about 2, the Pearson VUE and the GED are synonymous, and then the HiSET is the separate test that has come on the scene recently.
Thank you. Representative Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is also for you. I understand that sadly our reservations are something of a unique situation. We were given information about how difficult it has been for Native students to pass this exam. Are there any figures for non-Native students or students off the reservation and their taking of the test?
Madam Chair. Yes, and we have seen, and was mentioned in the previous testimony, that the pass rates across the country have been lower with the new GED than they were previously. So not just isolated to the reservations, but other areas have seen those declines in pass rates as well. So now that, as was mentioned, those cut scores were changed just in February, or actually in January, towards the end of the month. So we haven't yet seen the total impact of what those new scores will be. There will be more people that will pass on the reservation and off the reservation, so that will take some time for that to all sort through the process. But it's not just limited.
Okay, thank you. The chair is going to close questions, and I'm going to defer the discussion and action on 1146. We'll be moving on to House Bill 1147, an act to prohibit school districts from using school or athletic team names, mascots, or nicknames that are determined to be racially derogatory or discriminatory. And the chair reminds everyone here in this room that the expectation is respectful to everyone in the room, and that we, even if you're feeling angry, that keep that at bay, because we have respectful conversations in Education Committee. Proponents, any proponents of House Bill 1147? And keep in mind, I think we have maybe 3 proponents, and so we want to get through this. We may end up deferring action too, because we want to use the people that are here for their testimony time.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Sean Bordeaux, District 26A, Mission, South Dakota. Madam Chair, members of the committee, I bring forth today House Bill 1147, a bill to prohibit school districts from using school or athletic team names, mascots, or nicknames that are determined to be racially derogatory or discriminatory. This is a bill that gives people a venue who feel offended by names of mascots in schools that use racially insensitive names to express their opposition to the derogatory or discriminatory images of such things as our people, the Lakota, Dakota, Lakota, Dakota, Nakota brother nations that so generously shared their geographic areas or nations through treaty agreements with the United States, paving the way for settlers, homesteaders, and others who came to occupy our wonderful state that we all love and call home. Some areas of the state are a little insensitive to the feelings that mascots bring to our native people, and our youth in particular. The dehumanizing of our people makes it seem abstract in some way, and it is as if we don't have to have empathy. We don't have to have empathy for the image. We're like playing cowboys and Indians still, and it is all in good fun. As a society, I believe we have moved beyond that stereotypical Hollywood image that we were always cast in up until Dances with Wolves came along. I don't mind saying that our university employees from St. Galeska University taught the language and culture that authenticated that movie. Costner continues to make revenue from the culture of our people in high schools, and our high schools in places like Watertown need to be brought into question as to whether they are offending people with their crazy costumes and portrayal of our beautiful culture that is a mainstay in bringing tourism to the state, to say the least. It has been brought out in social media and has been ignored in a place where some of the first and most successful economic ventures in gaming occurred in South Dakota. It is time we hold people accountable who are teaching our children how to become good citizens with their tribal brethren and how to get along in the future years ahead of us. We've had many rocky roads that we've had to come through back in the 70s and at many other times in our history together as great nations. I witnessed a lot of that during the nearly 50 years that I've lived and traveled our beautiful state. Our children deserve to have a clean slate when they come together to negotiate in the future agreements that will define us as stewards of this great state that we all love. No more name calling, just concerned people looking out for one another. In my household, we were taught not to use the term Indian, as it denigrated who we really were and continued an old stereotype that we were bigger than and that we outgrew many times over. We were the only nation to defeat the United States on the field of battle, there in Montana against some of my own grandfather's relatives. We continue to pay for that victory today through our poverty and socioeconomic ills that come with it. That is enough of a tough road to hoe for our youth. And then to add the poking fun of our culture and name-calling at sporting events like it is a joke. Well, I submit to you, committee, that this is no joke, and our way of life is as true to us as anything that you believe in your heart of hearts. Our people believe that we come from the center of the earth through Wind Cave as much as we do Christianity, and this bill drives to the heart of our culture and what is appropriate and what is not appropriate to who we are and how we live. Thank you, committee. I will stand by for questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative, we have someone on the phone. Is that who you would like to have next, or do you have other proponents that before? It's Mr. Mendoza, I believe.
I believe Mr. Mendoza is the White House Conference on Indian Education representative, and he's also a tribal member from my tribe, so I would certainly like to use his time as best as we can.
Would you like to have him next as a proponent, or do you have someone else that you would like move forward with him?
Have him go for
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Mendoza, are you on?
I am.
Okay, please proceed with your testimony.
Thank you very much, and just want to acknowledge Representative Bordeaux, thank him for his leadership, and especially to the legislative body of South Dakota, my home state. As the representative so indicated, I'm South Dakota born. I'm also Ogallala and Sicangu Lakota. I have deep roots in much of western South Dakota. My father is from Cheyenne River, and I grew up on the Pine Ridge and Rosebud Indian reservations, was not only a student, attended tribal colleges, Legislature and College, and proud to say this opportunity to speak before you is tremendously humbling and is a privilege. And please, to my elders, both native and non-native, forgive me for speaking in front of you. I'm not quite so much a young man anymore, but I do know that those who've come before us and their wisdom is to be addressed lightly. And so I offer these words of encouragement as well as to try to expose you to the level of engagement that this issue that you are considering before you here today is an important one and worthy of your time and attention. Through the White House Initiative on American Indian and Alaska Native Education at the U.S. Department of Education, we work hard to not only improve the education for American Indian and Alaska Native students across the country, but also to expand their opportunities. And throughout the early lifespan of this initiative and how we've worked to address those goals as well as strengthen our tribal colleges and universities, one core concern that has always been raised by students, tribal leaders, educators, and Native youth were that we needed to collect information on their school environment experiences from teachers, parents, community members, and the students themselves. Tribal leaders and tribal communities wanted the initiative and the department to hear about the challenges these students face in gaining a high-quality education with a focus on the quality of their school environment. To meet this need, in the collaboration with Ed's Office for Civil Rights, we worked with tribal leaders and tribal communities around the country to design and execute a series of nationwide listening sessions regarding the school environments of Native students. In October and November of 2014, 9 gatherings were held in 7 states, from New York to California to Alaska. The culmination of this effort is the 2015 Student Environment Listening Sessions report that I'm happy to make sure that our legislators have not only in their mailbox, but also within their email inbox. The White House Initiative has found this feedback from these sessions invaluable in informing the enclosed recommendations and the next steps that I know are so tremendously relevant to what you all are considering for Native students there in South Dakota. In short, these are the voices, the recommendations, and story of our Native youth. The findings and recommendations, although not exhaustive, touch upon a broad array of challenges they face. I'd like to emphasize a few for you in this short time that we have together that are at the core of our mutual commitment to address the unique challenges faced by this vulnerable yet resilient population. Ed data shows that nationally, the masses of students who are American Indian and Alaska Native attend school districts by where they are less than 10% of the population. And these students, more often than not, actually commonly comprise of less than 1% of the population within their schools. Therefore, a core challenge for this population of students is the fact that they are dispersed across the country and attend schools where they are in the extreme minority population, and for all intents and purposes, nearly invisible. These students' experiences are much like my own children here within Arlington Public Schools, where they are but a handful of students in any given school, and aside from their immediate families, are typically isolated from tribal support systems like reservations or urban Native centers. And you can even apply this to the notion of a Rapid City or a Sioux Falls, and everywhere in between. In addition to this complexity, at least according to the data, American Indians and Alaska Natives are disappearing at an alarming rate. As we look at the data, and one of the things that we heard through listening sessions was an urgent concern regarding data quality. From 2009 to 2012, we are seeing dramatic decreases in American Indian and Alaska Native student populations. Coupled with the dispersed realities of this population, parents, educators, and tribal leaders consistently raise concerns that under-identification of Native students has resulted in those students not receiving important school services available for
Mr. Mendoza? Mr.
Yeah.
Mendoza? Mr.
Yeah.
Mendoza? Yes. The bill we're on is talking about school and athletic team names, mascots, or nicknames. Could you address that part of it? Because we don't have very much time yet.
Let me get to the point then.
Okay.
Native youth and parents, and this invisibility, they expressed an urgent call to action to address hostile learning environments that adversely impact their opportunities and outcomes. specifically dealing with harmful stereotypes, and American Alaska Native students communicated that harmful imagery and symbolism are at the core of all other challenges, that they manifest themselves in a number of ways that adversely affect their compulsory school experiences. In short, environments where negative stereotypes permeate students' educational experiences, those images and symbols speak for our tribes and tribal people long before they ever get a chance to speak for themselves. Not only do these images and symbols affect teacher and leader behavior by where these students communicated that they are being treated differently and their opportunities are limited, but students also feel that these images and symbols directly led to bullying and being treated differently by their peers unless they comply, adopt, use, and perpetuate these harmful imagery and symbolism. In addition to teacher, and leader behavior, we learned that the school environment is an important and very visible factor in the school climate. We know more now than ever before that imagery and symbolism we surround our students with matters. Our consideration of the historical and contemporary significance of Native-themed mascots, logos, and related customs is an essential consideration of any school study of school student climate. What we also heard, the interrelated concerns that there are not only gaps in what is being taught about Native Americans, but there exists misinformation in many cases, and in some cases, harmful information that affects teaching, resources, strategies utilized by teachers and leaders, as well as the underlying values embraced by their peers, community members of Native students. Let me fast forward and close with this. The culmination of these issues and the effects that it has on non-Native students as well, and the correlating research and data suggests that schools are not a place where Native youth feel they belong or can thrive, but rather feel unwelcomed, isolated, and in fear of being pushed out, particularly the further they get away from their tribal support centers. The Native youth that shared their stories with us come from diverse and unique locations and cultures. However, their shared experiences with harmful stereotypes are common and tragically normal. Our collective failure to address harmful imagery and symbolism not only inhibits our mutual responsibility to surround our youth with positive representations of who their people are, but this issue is also inextricably tied to the challenge we face not being able to adequately address other critical fronts, including life outcomes in health, wellness, academic achievement, and economic strength. A conversation in examining the historical and contemporary use of human beings as imagery and symbolism in our schools is not about personal offense or an assault on personal liberty. It is about the harm and the limitation of opportunities experienced by all students. Such analysis and hopefully action is absolutely about civil rights. And so we look forward to working with you all state legislators, both at the state level as well as at the local level, to encourage schools to provide our Native and non-Native students with a healthy and welcoming environment. Thank you for your time, and I apologize if I took more time than was warranted.
Thank you, Mr. Mendoza. Would you be able to stay on the line in case we have questions once we get through the testimony?
If I could defer, I am at this moment getting ready to take the stage to testify before the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights on related matters, and so unfortunately I don't know how long I'll be able to stay on, but I'll stay on as long as I can. Okay. But if I have to drop off, that's the reason why. So please excuse the absence if it's a deadline.
Thank you very much. We'll move forward with the next proponents.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Manning, and I'm a social science educator at Teoshbazina Tribal Schools on the Lake Traverse Indian Reservation. I'm a member of the Shoshone and Paiute tribes, which is on the Duck Valley Indian Reservation in Idaho and Nevada. However, I've lived on the Lake Traverse Reservation as an educator for the last 6. I'm here to encourage you to vote yes on moving House Bill 1147 forward, as this bill will reinforce the need for schools to serve as safe environments for all students. But first, I'd like to share just a few really important facts concerning the imagery that we're discussing here. Firstly, the two most popular mascots in America are animals and Indians. And where there are a very small fraction of mascots, such as the Irish or the Knights, it's minuscule in comparison to the usage of mascots such as Indians, Redskins, Redmen, Warriors, Braves, and so on. And among these mascots, there is a whole range. I mean, some are clearly more offensive and archaic terms than others. So this is definitely not a black and white issue. But even if you could conjure up some of those images in your mind, whether it be of a professional team or a local school image, just kind of put that image in your mind. The images are typically male. The images are typically portrayed very serious, hostile. Mascots are supposed to present themselves as fierce. And this portrayal is very skewed. This is a very colonial portrayal of Native Americans and does not even touch upon the totality of our humanity, because the experience that the colonial government had with Native Americans was of a very defensive nature because we were defending our homelands. However, as I mentioned, the totality of our humanity didn't very often involve this fierceness. Even if you were to look at the word Dakota, it means ally. And the way that their culture is, that I've learned in the time that I've been here, is very peaceful, is to greet people in a humble way. It does not involve this fierce, angry warrior that the mascots portray Native Americans as. So the portrayals are male. They're of the Native American of the past, typically with feathers in their hair, more often than not a Plains Indian, regardless of whether the mascot is in Florida or in the Pacific Northwest. It's a Plains Indian, very stereotypical. And in general, just devoid of basic humanity. It's not women. But what mascots represent is this phenomena in general of the stereotypical representation. Even if you think of the Harley-Davidson motorcycles, it's the same exact thing. If you think of the movies that are released, the majority of them are the same Native American of the past. I have a personal experience as an educator that reflects the same phenomena. To take the praxis examination to be highly qualified to teach American Indian history, I had to take the world history examination. And of the, I want to say roughly 300 or so questions, there were 10 on Native Americans. And mind you, this was to be highly qualified to teach Native American history. And of those 10, the last question ended in 1830 with the Indian Removal Act. So there wasn't even a mentioning of Native Americans past 1830. So again, this Native American of the past. And so this imagery that is saturating our society causes harm. It doesn't, it inhibits Native American youth from seeing themselves as a people of the future. It compromises their self-esteem. In one leading study from Dr. Stephanie Freiberg at Stanford University, she conducted a few different studies and found that when Native youth were exposed to this sort of imagery, she basically measured three different, areas of study. The first was their sense of self-esteem. So when shown a series of these images of Native Americans of the past, Dr. Stephanie Freiberg from Stanford University found that their self-esteem, after answering a series of questions, their self-esteem was much lower than Native youth who were shown modern examples of, say, many of us in here, doctors, legislators, lawyers, teachers, looking modern, looking happy, just as other members of society. The other area that Dr. Stephanie Freiberg mentioned or studied and researched was their sense of, or their belief in their future selves. And so showing them a series of these pictures of Native Americans of the past, she asked, what would you like to be when you grow up? Well, when they're shown the saturation of images of us in the past, many answers were, I don't know. They did not know what they wanted to be. And in a similar scenario, we know young girls today in American society need to see themselves in various different portrayals in media because the images matter. Images matter for everyone. So with this negative imagery, it compromised their future selves. And then lastly, the other area that the Freiberg study measured was their sense of community worth. How do you feel about your community? Are you proud of your community? Are you proud of where you come from? And what the studies replicated across various different Native American communities where she conducted the study nationwide was that it compromised their sense of community worth. Because again, having this very one-dimensional, negative, fierce portrayal, many Native youth were shown to have a compromised belief in the value of their entire community. So her studies, while relatively more recent, really prompted a lot of action from schools nationwide. Not only the empirical studies, but also many of the recommendations of national organizations such as the American Psychological Association, American Counselors Association. It's just a growing number. But as an educator in the school system, I've been able to also witness firsthand how exactly this impacts the youth of the Lake Traverse Reservation. In the past year, I've been asked to give presentations and assist a number of Native youth in taking a stand against offensive imagery. And the really unfortunate thing was that those youth that stood up for their civil rights, for recognition of their humanity and the totality of who they are, faced an enormous amount of backlash. Some of those same youth went before school boards asking for homecoming coronations to change. And they were not met with a whole lot of, they weren't very well received in the sense that there was no action. They moved on. There wasn't an acknowledgement of, I'm sorry you're experiencing this. We'd love to help you. We'd love to make this school an environment where everyone feels valued and honored. So what I'm saying is that with this legislation, it takes the burden off of the youth. And considering that as it is, Native Americans are such a minority, our voice can very easily be overpowered by the majority, can very easily be overpowered. And there's a history of backlash when speaking out against Indian mascots. So this leads to many people simply choosing not to. There's a lot of fear associated with it. So with the passage of this legislation, again, it takes that burden off of them. It allows Native youth to feel valued and honored to the same degree that all other children are. And as we know as educators, the environment in school should be one that promotes the self-actualization of all students. And what these mascots and activities associated with them do is they compromise and inhibit the self-actualization by compromising the self-esteem of Native youth. But on a positive note, what is really hopeful is that there's forward momentum even within the state of South Dakota in regard to mascots and activities. I've had the privilege of working with some board members and interacting with the South Dakota High School Activities Association and offering some research and work that I've done in the past. I've had the privilege of working with Watertown Superintendent and some of the board members, and they're currently in the process of making some really great changes after looking at the evidence, after recognizing their responsibility and the enormous position they're in to positively impact Native youth. And as we've heard several times in here today, Native American youth are already extremely vulnerable. We already have the odds stacked against our kids. And my involvement with education was solely for the purpose of helping Native youth to have a greater chance in the world. In my time as an educator, I've seen numerous Native youth take their lives, attempt to take their lives, suffer with poor self-esteem. So the last thing that we need is this message sent out that your voice really doesn't matter. And I'm sorry you feel that way, but deal with it. So I think what we're really looking for now is legislative action. As I mentioned, there are some schools that have been very favorable. Recently, the McLaughlin High School changed their mascot after hearing from Little People of America showing great empathy and responsibility. But as I mentioned, not everybody functions that same way. Some people need legislative action. So with that, I ask that you push this bill forward for the sake of Native youth and moving along with the times and making progress in the name of all children, and also by eliminating these mascots and offensive activities. You're also simultaneously creating space for accurate representations. And we'll hear a bill later where we're asking for that as well. We're asking for those accurate representations so Native youth feel just as valued. They see themselves as a people of the present and the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Bordeaux, could you help me? You have another bill, 1148, and we are going to run out of time, and I'm wondering if there are people here. I want to continue with the testimony on 1147, but for 1148, are there people from out of town here that we need to allow time for their testimony today so they don't have to come back another day?
Yes,
I'm just
Madam
trying
Chair.
to pace so that we can make sure that people that are from out of town are accommodated.
I think we have some folks from Sisseton here who would
Okay.
probably like to get
Okay.
their testimony done as well.
Let's get the out-of-town testimony done for 1147. So do we have more people testifying on 1147 that are from out of town? And I know this gets confusing for the committee, but I also know that people travel a long ways and they take time off from work, and it makes it difficult because Monday would be the day we would have to address this again in order to complete it. So I'm just trying to make sure we get it all done. So you're on 1147 proponent, correct, with the mascots and the, okay, thank you.
Good morning
Just
again.
identify.
My name is Crystal Owen, and I'm a member of the System Mopton Oyate. Today I am representing myself. I just want to say thank you to Mr. Bordeaux for bringing this issue forth before you to hear. When I listened to Sarah Manning, this conversation always is a very difficult one, even in my own community. I'm from Sisseton, Redmond. I don't know if I were to guess, I would say 50-50% in our community. People say, we like it. I want to be a Red Man. I graduated from that high school. I'm a proud Red Man. So that's the reason I'm speaking on my own behalf. So it's very difficult when I listen to Sarah. 1 year ago today, actually, on this very day, our high school students got together, the ones who felt that abused, or they felt like they didn't like what they were being called Red Men. They felt bad. So they got together, a group of young people, about 20 young people, and they wanted to use their voices to speak out. And I supported them. And I wasn't even sure how I felt about the issue. So, because I was confused. So these young people stood out and they used their voices, and I supported them because they used their voices, because they could speak out. And in our communities, in our tribal communities, it's hard for our children to use their voice. And so to support them to do that, when we talk about what happens to us as Native people, in 2 minutes you're not going to get it, because it's historical trauma. I sat back there and I started to cry just to listen. You don't know how it feels to be traumatized in that way, to have these mascots represent who we are not. And it's very hard for each and every, when we talk about Dakota, it means an ally, a friend. People who work together, it's not just somebody from our tribe, but Dakota people all over the country. When we talk about historical trauma, the things that we have been through, and I would just ask all of you to think about that. And close your mind, close your eyes, open your minds, and think about these images, these pictures. They depict not who we are as Dakota people. And I would ask that you would take time to really think about it, who we are as Dakota people in our hearts, and that you would think about that. Try and feel that. Imagine yourself depicted. They show those pictures maybe as opposed to this, maybe I don't know, white power or I don't know, something like that. It's derogatory. That's not who we are. And so I just wanted to you to think about that as you make your decision on this issue. So many issues, and I'm glad that these are coming forth, because we're learning the process too, to come here and ask for your vote, for your favor, that you would look upon us, that you would get to know us, who we are as people, and that you would respect that as we respect you. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other out-of-town proponents for House Bill 1147, out of town, that would not be able to be here as we continue this process? Okay, so the chair is going to defer additional testimony on here and then the continuing questions, discussion, and action of House Bill 1147. And we're going to move on to 1148 so that we can pick up the out-of-town testimony on 1148. 1148 is an act to require schools to provide instruction on South Dakota's tribal history, culture, and government. Any proponents? This is out of the ordinary of what we usually do here, but I want to know that everyone has their voice heard.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Sean Bordeaux, District 26A, Mission. House Bill 1148, as was said, is a bill requiring schools to provide instruction on South Dakota's tribal history, culture, and government. It has been adopted in 2 other states, Montana and Washington, and it would help bring our people closer in race relations. It's a very difficult subject that we're all a little unsure how to approach. Education is the key, that much I am sure. Now, I know a lot of people will say that our history and culture is not as important as, say, science and math, for example. But I say it is every bit as important as science and math, which fortunately we have a lot of people promoting science and math through STEM. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of people promoting learning about who the first people in South Dakota were and continue to be today. I know I was taught Christopher Columbus discovered America, and to this day we're called Indians. I was taught, as I said before in testimony, that I was taught not to use that term, but rather use Lakota to denote our brother people or ally. When I came here last year as a freshman, I wanted to bring forth some bills, and I tried to escape using that language. But unfortunately, it's in the Federal Register, we as Indian tribes. So even today, in House Bill 1146, I had to use the word Indian. Many of the Native youth throughout South Dakota attend school in Sioux Falls, Rapid City, Aberdeen, Pierre, my own children in Yankton, as well as Vermilion, to name a few cities with substantial Native populations and students attending schools. Now, I know we have the Oceti Shakowee standards and that they're trying to get this into our schools. They're doing their best. Many people that I work with at St. Agoleshka University and through the Todd County school system were the ones to develop that. Now, although I learned what I said about Columbus discovering America, I went to school I went to teach in the schools as a assistant in the 90s, and the curriculum still hadn't changed. There's just a lack of meaningful discussion and activities related to our Lakota, Dakota, Nakota culture. I just wonder, why not take some time every day and learn a little bit about who we are before we lose everyone who can best explain it, using our own language and our ways of being to help guide us. 50 years, many of these people may not be here, and we'll be looking up what some anthropologist said to try to decipher who we are. And this may mean saving the life of some of our youth who have the highest rate of suicide in the world because their self-esteem is low and society sees them in a different light that stereotypes their people, as Hollywood has done and society continues to do. Now, what makes me think that our culture and history is not taught in our schools? I'll leave you with one example. I testified last week to State Affairs Committee, which is the leadership in our legislature, on a resolution related to the Black Hills. Now, I was questioned by our esteemed colleague from Lincoln County, who most of us know has taught history most of his life. He asked me about the court case related to the Black Hills claim, and I told him about it. I give him some history, all that was involved geographically, brought him up to when the case was decided, and as it was ruled, how Justice Blackmun had said it was one of the most, if not the most ripe and rank case of American injustice than anywhere else in our history. When I got done, he asked me to briefly follow up with another question of how far did this case go in court? Now, I was surprised that he didn't know much about the court case as a South Dakota history buff. I was even more surprised that the name Justice Blackmun hadn't rung a bell to him. I answered that it went to the Supreme Court and it was decided in 1980. Pretty recent stuff that every South Dakotan should know a little bit about. If a South Dakota history teacher doesn't know that much about our history, then I wonder who does. I know these essential understandings have been in place, and yet when I went to my own school, to which I have 6 kids in the Todd County school system, and I asked what they teach regarding Lakota language, history, culture, and the lady said she had taught for 24 years. She was a Native American who was a couple years younger than me, and she said, we just don't have the tools. These essential understandings aren't ready to be implemented in the classroom. And if South Dakota wants us to teach these, they have to have them ready. So some will testify that maybe that's a cop-out, or maybe that's an excuse for not doing their job. But I submit that this young lady who taught for 24 years, she knows education in our community pretty well as a Native young person who went through the system. So about 50% of our population is said to live in urban areas. They don't really get these essential understandings that are being brought to the reservations, and they're supposed to be brought to the whole state. But we know this isn't happening. It is important that we give these urban Indians as much relevant curriculum about who they are while we have them as a captive audience. I thank you for your time, and I stand by for questions.
Okay, I am only asking for out-of-town proponent testimony because we want to cover that today. We have about 6 minutes left of committee time. Okay. I'm glad you don't have to come back on Monday.
I am too. Thank you. Good morning again, Madam Chair and members of the House Committee. I am Dr. Sherry Johnson, the Tribal Education Director, and I represent the Sistinawapan Oyate. I am a member of the South Dakota Indian Education Advisory Council and a member of the Native American Student Achievement Advisory Council, the NASACA, the past work group, which was a work group formed by Governor Dugard, charged with 4 items to seek information on and to report back. We worked with Dr. Shop and Mato I keep calling him Standing Bear, Standing High. The first and primary item for the NASACA work group was factors affecting achievement of Native children. All across South Dakota, Native American students do not perform like their non-Native peers in the state assessments. This is a concern that prevails throughout the meetings for the South Dakota Indian Education Advisory Council and the previous NASACA work group. This is the achievement gap that Dr. Shop can repeatedly be heard to say, I own that. Our Sistinawapan Tribal Education Department works collaboratively with all areas of education to conclude birth to lifelong learning. We have 3 tribal schools and several public schools in the surrounding area, which include approximately 1,500 Native children, and thus academic success is a high priority. We have discussed the need for instruction to include South Dakota tribal history, culture, government, and as a tribe have offered to assist with the development of the curriculum of such education for all of our surrounding schools. I applaud the South Dakota Department of Education in the development of the Ocheti Shakoi Essential Understandings. This is the only document that provides Native students the Native standards for teachers to make education relevant to Native learners. Our local and biggest public school has not adopted the Ocheti Shakoi Essential Understandings, but rather states those aren't mandated. This is the same school that has approximately 901 students, which of 604 are Native children, where the Smarter Balanced test scores for Native students are 18 and 16% proficiency in English, language arts, and math, respectively. We have a mandate for instruction in tribal. We need the mandate for instruction in tribal history, culture, and government to help impact all education areas. Throughout the NASACA report, there is a call for culturally relevant curriculum and materials as one of the identified needs. Presently, students are disassociated with education and need to have increased motivation and interest in their own learning. Through expanded and improved curricular materials about Indian tribes, classroom programs, community cultural exchanges, this will help make education more applicable to Native students. The mandate for all schools to utilize the Ocheti Shakoi essential understandings is needed. The mandate for all schools to provide instruction on South Dakota tribal history, culture, government is needed. Such critically needed changes will positively impact Native academic achievement for all Native students attending public schools across South Dakota. I'm asking you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents from out of town? Welcome back.
Yeah. I didn't sign up for the bill, but I felt compelled to come up here and talk to you. And that is, you know, we need to have a more positive image of the Indian people in the state. And the information that I gave to you earlier about Francis Janice being in World War I, his war record. And what about all the other Indian people that are made positive contributions to the state? Clarence Wolfguts. Everybody accords that we won World War II because of the code talkers. Clarence Wolfguts was a code talker, and he was from our reservation. There were other code talkers in South Dakota. The other situation, how many people in our state know of Billy Mills? You probably all do, but do the young people know about Billy Mills? Do people know about Oscar Howe, one of the great artists of South Dakota? We need to give a positive image of the Indian people in this state. One of the images that people get, especially in the city of Rapid City, they see the homeless Indian people, and 90% of them probably drunk. And so what perceptions do white people have about us? They think that we're lazy, they think that we're no good, and that we're drunks. But there are many of our people that go to work every day. They're hardworking people. They do a fantastic job. And you saw a representation of that today. Look at all these wonderful people that came and testified to you today. They're articulate, they're smart, and people are not seeing this in our state. By having a instruction in our schools about the positive contributions of Indian people to the state would reverse this negative perception that many people in our state have about Indian people. Thank you for the time.
Other proponents for House Bill 1148 from out of town?
Thank you again. As I mentioned, I'm a social science educator, and in my time while at Teoshpazina Tribal School, I've had the privilege of teaching Native American history. And in that time, I've had the privilege of witnessing firsthand also how this positively affects Native youth. Now, in regard to either the absence of positive imagery and the presence of stereotypical imagery, there is no evidence to confirm that this is positive for Native youth. However, there's an overwhelming amount of evidence and a growing body of evidence to affirm that this is exactly what Native youth need to see. But not only Native youth, all children. As an educator of history, what I know as well is that history provides us a context for understanding who we are today, whether it's our values or even our struggles. And with the absence of Native Americans in public education, this again gives way, I'm just echoing what others have said, this gives way to stereotypes. And considering that South Dakota has a very large population, I see it as a huge disservice that there isn't a greater presence of discussion of Native Americans in all subject areas. So I ask that you push this bill forward as well for all children to have a better understanding of Native American people. And what I think personally one of the greatest benefits of understanding our past as Native American people and non-Natives understanding our past is it provides that context for understanding all of our struggles and all of our realities. So instead of simply labeling poor, poverty, lazy, drunk, there's an understanding that Native Americans have experienced a historical trauma unlike any other group in this country. And so this produces the empathy that our society very much can benefit from. And even in terms of, I know also in the bill it mentions government. This will facilitate an understanding and a respect for tribal sovereignty. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, the chair defers the testimony until Monday. We will be taking these bills up again on Monday. And with that, I think that we're going to be asking for a motion to adjourn. It's been moved by someone over here, Representative Holmes, seconded by Representative Gibson. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, the same sign. We are adjourned.